学而 Chapter 1。一子曰：学而时习之，不亦乐乎？有朋自远方来，不亦乐乎？人不知而不愠，不亦君子乎？ Confucius remarked, It is indeed a pleasure to acquire knowledge and, as you go on acquiring, to put into practice what you have acquired. A greater pleasure still it is when friends of congenial minds come from afar to seek you because of your attainments. But he is truly a wise and good man who feels no discomposure even when he is not noticed of man. 二有子曰：其为人也孝弟而好犯上者，先矣；不好犯上而好作乱者，谓之有也。君子务本，本立而道生。孝弟也者，其为人之本与。A disciple of Confucius remarked, A man who is a good son and a good citizen will seldom be found to be a man disposed to quarrel with those in authority over him, and men who are not disposed to quarrel with those in authority will never be found to disturb the peace and order of the state. A wise man devotes his attention to what is essential in the foundation of life. When the foundation is laid, wisdom will come. Now, to be a good son and a good citizen, do not these form the foundation of a moral life? 三子曰：巧言令色，先宜人。Confucius remarked, With plausible speech and fine manners will seldom be found moral character. 四曾子曰：吾日三省吾身，为人谋而不忠乎？与朋友交而不信乎？传不习乎？A disciple of Confucius remarked, I daily examine into my personal conduct on 3 points. First, whether in carrying out the duties entrusted to me by others, I have not failed in conscientiousness. Secondly, whether in intercourse with friends, I have not failed in sincerity and trustworthiness. Thirdly, whether I have not failed to practice what I profess in my teaching. 五子曰：到千乘之国，敬时而信，节用而爱人，使民以时。Confucius remarked, when directing the affairs of a great nation, a man must be serious in attention to business and faithful and punctual in his engagements. He must study economy in the public expenditure and love the welfare of the people. He must employ the people at the proper time of the year. Footnote: In ancient China, the people were lightly taxed, but were liable to forced labor and conscription in times of war. 六子曰：弟子入则孝，出则弟，谨而信，反爱众而亲仁。行有余力，则以学文。Confucius remarked, A young man, when at home, should be a good son, when out in the world, a good citizen. He should be circumspect and truthful. He should be in sympathy with all men, but intimate with men of moral character. If he has time and opportunity to spare, after the performance of those duties, he should then employ them in literary pursuits. 七子夏曰：贤贤易色，使父母能竭其力，使君能治其身，与朋友交言而有信。虽曰未学，吾必谓之学矣。A disciple of Confucius remarked, A man who can love worthiness in man as he loves beauty in woman, who in his duties to his parents is ready to do his utmost, and in the service of his prince is ready to give up his life, who in intercourse with friends is found trustworthy in what he says, such a man, although men may say of him that he is an uneducated man, I must consider him to be really an educated man. 八子曰：君子不重则不威，学则不固。主忠信，无有不如己者，过则勿惮改。Confucius remarked, A wise man who is not serious will not inspire respect. What he learns will not remain permanent. Make conscientiousness and sincerity your first principles. Have no friends who are not as yourself. When you have bad habits, do not hesitate to change them. 九曾子曰：慎终追远，民德归后矣。A disciple of Confucius remarked, By cultivating respect for the dead, and carrying the memory back to the distant past, the moral feeling of the people will waken and grow in depth. 时子禽问于子贡曰：夫子至于是邦也，必闻其政，求之与？亦与之与？子贡曰：夫子温良恭俭让以得之。夫子之求之也，其诸亦乎人之求之与？ A man once asked the disciple of Confucius, saying, How was it that whenever the master came into a country, he was always informed of the actual state and policy of its government? Did he seek for the information, or was it given to him? The master, replied the disciple, was gracious, simple, earnest, modest, and courteous. Therefore, he could obtain what information he wanted. The master's way of obtaining information well, it was different from other people's ways. 11子曰：父在，观其志；父莫，观其行。3年无改于父之道，可为孝矣。 Confucius remarked, when a man's father is living, the son should have regard to what his father would have him do. When the father is dead, to what his father has done. A son who for 3 years after his father's death does not in his own life change his father's principles, may be said to be a good son. 12. 有子曰：礼之用，和为贵。先王之道斯为美，小大由之。有所不行，知和而和，不以礼节之，亦不可行也。A disciple of Confucius remarked, in the practice of art, what is valuable is natural spontaneity. According to the rules of art held by the ancient kings, it was this quality in a work of art which constituted his excellence. In great as well as in small things, they were guided by this principle. But in being natural, there is something not permitted. To know that it is necessary to be natural without restraining the impulse to be natural by the strict principle of art, that is something not permitted. Footnote: Dr. Legge says of the Chinese word li, which we have here translated art, that it is a word not easily rendered in another language. On the other hand, Mr. B.H. Chamberlain in his book Famous Japanese remarks that Japanese language, China and Japan have the same written language, has no genuine native word for art. The English word art, if we mistake not, is used in various senses to express, first, a work of art, second, the practice of art, third, artificial as opposed to natural, fourth, the principle of art as opposed to the principle of nature, fifth, the strict principle of art. In this last sense of the use of the English word art lies, as Dr. Legge says of the Chinese word mentioned above, the idea of what is proper and fit to pai in all relations of things. For those who may be interested in the subject, we may here mention that the modern Japanese invention, Baijitsu Meishu, beautiful legerdemain, for art is not a happy one. The proper term in Chinese for a work of art would be wenwu. For the practice of art, in fact, the Japanese word geisha, yishi, means literally an artiste. As for the use of the term art in the sense of artificial as opposed to something natural, the philosopher Zhuangzi used ren, human, and tian, divine. Then the principle of art, not taken by itself, but as opposed to the principle of nature, would be in Chinese, wen, for art, and zhi, for nature. Such a sentence as that of Goethe, for instance, art is called art, because it is no nature, would be rendered into Chinese or Japanese thus, 文之所以谓之文为非志也. Chinese art critics also speak of Huagong creative art and Huagong imitative art. Finally, we may as well add, the Chinese term for mechanical art or the practice of it is 技艺. 13. 有子曰：信近于义，言可复也；恭近于礼，远耻辱也。因不失其亲，亦可宗也。 A disciple of Confucius remarked, if you make promises within the bounds of what is right, you will be able to keep your word. If you confine earnestness within the bounds of judgment and good taste, you will keep out of discomfiture and insult. If you make friends of those with whom you ought to, you will be able to depend upon them. 14子曰：君子食无求饱，居无求安，敏于事而慎于言，就有道而正焉，可谓好学也已。 Confucius remarked, a wise and good man, in matters of food, should never seek to indulge his appetite. In lodging, He should not be too solicitous of comfort. He should be diligent in business and careful in speech. He should seek for the company of men of virtue and learning, in order to profit by their lessons and example. In this way he may become a man of real culture. 15. 子贡曰：贫而无谄，富而无骄，何如？子曰：可也。未若贫而乐衣，富而好礼者也。子贡曰：是云，如切如磋，如琢如磨，其斯之谓与？子曰：次也，始可与言师已矣。告诸往而知来者。A disciple of Confucius said to him, to be poor and yet not to be servile, to be rich and yet not to be proud. What do you say to that? It is good, replied Confucius, but better still it is to be poor and yet contented, to be rich and yet know how to be courteous. I understand, answered the disciple. We must cut, we must file, must chisel and must grind. My friend, replied Confucius, now I can begin to speak of poetry to you. I see you understand how to apply the moral. 16. 子曰：不患人之不己知，患不知人也。Confucius remarked, one should not be concerned not to be understood of men. One should be concerned not to understand men.